everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All Podcast, the number one publication and resource for the Internet of Things. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon. If you are watching this on YouTube, truly appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. If you're listening to this on a podcast directory like Apple Podcasts, please subscribe so you get the latest episodes as soon as they are out, and it also helps other people find the content. All right, on today's episode, we have Soumya Das, goes by Das, the COO of Inpixion. They are an innovator in indoor intelligence, delivering actionable insights for people, places, and things. Basically, what they do is they're combining the power of mapping, positioning, analytics to create smarter, safer, and more secure environments. So we talk about smart environments. We talk about the metaverse. We talk about kind of what the metaverse even means to them, since I feel like a lot of people have different definitions of it and how they're viewing it. Talk about how businesses can use the metaverse, what the role of digital twins is in the metaverse as well, and then use cases for corporate and industrial businesses around for IoT and Industry 4.0. So a lot of great, interesting content here. Like anytime we talk about the metaverse, people are paying attention. So I think you'll get a lot of value out of it and really enjoy this episode. But before we get into it, any of you out there are looking to enter the fast-growing and profitable IoT market, but don't know where to start? Check out our sponsor, Leverage. Leverage's IoT solutions development platform provides everything you need to create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. And without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All Podcast. Welcome, Das, the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to have you. Let's kick this off by having you give a quick introduction about yourself to our audience.
Sure thing. My name is Soumya Das. Friends call me Das. I'm the CEO of Inpixion. Prior to this, I've been in the security industry, mostly working in the physical and digital entities, bringing them together to a more homogeneous security understanding in the industry, which is lacking. Prior to that, I worked in content management and knowledge management industry. So I'm integrally, involved in working with new technologies and trying to, bring it into our business.
Fantastic. How about giving our audience a little overview of the company, kind of what you do, the company does, the role you have in this space, anything along those lines would be great.
Yeah, so Inpixion is an innovator of indoor intelligence. And by that, we mean is delivering actionable insights for people, places, and things, where we're combining the power of mapping, positioning, analytics, bringing it together for our customers to have meaningful solutions. You will have many solution providers out there. We will have one or the other technologies, and the customers have to weave them together. Our visions that we started with 6 years ago, acquiring some of these core technologies because they're strategic to the end result, the end application. So we leveraged, we acquired these technologies and then leveraged them to put together an enterprise app, which helps global 3,000 businesses, and industrial apps that helps the manufacturing sector.
Fantastic. I know one of the topics we wanted to talk about today is around the metaverse. How does that tie into, if at all, to the work you all do as a company? Is that something that you're actively involved in? Is it like kind of a future thought? Like, what is it about the metaverse that kind of ties in potentially to the company itself?
Yeah, so it's very integral to our future where we are heading, right? So when you think about indoor intelligence, when you think about indoor, there's always a locational context. Where are you, right? What's your surrounding look like? How do you interact with them? And how does it affect your experience and efficiency and productivity within your work environment, right? And that's where Metaverse comes in, is that, we have been dealing with two-dimensional maps or these glass devices or your computer screen that are very two-dimensional, right? So you can only see a two-dimensional picture and some data around it, and that's what we have been used to. So when you are thinking of individuals working in this environment, there is not much to be achieved in this two-dimensional sphere, right? You can only be so much efficient. Now imagine if you can add a 3-dimension to that, and you add your surroundings to be richer graphics, immersive environment where data is plotted against all the surrounding items, maybe IoT or your printers or any of the items that you have, then it gets you that much more realistic within that system, right? And that's where the metaverse comes in, right? So
Gotcha.
your physical and digital universe now has got a uniform understanding and a cohesive, I'll say mix that gives you that experience, gives you that efficiency.
So let me ask you this: for audience out there, when they hear metaverse, a lot of them, I would assume, goes to kind of what they hear on more of the general consumer crypto connected NFT side of things, where you think of metaverse, plots of digital land, things like that. How does the metaverse play a role, or I guess, what are some of the business uses of the metaverse, and how can we kind of maybe separate the thought and differentiate from what is pretty widespread uh, discussion of what the metaverse is and how a lot of people think about it. But on the business side, it seems to, from discussions I've had in the past, has a different meaning. It's that, that, like you said, that adding that third dimension, it's adding, kind of connecting that physical and that digital world in a kind of in a different environment and feel. So how can businesses and how can people really start thinking about this in a different way than what we were talking about, and how it's kind of more promoted and discussed or used as a term for the consumer?
Yeah, and explaining that, Ryan, I'm sorry, I'll repeat myself on this experience stuff, right,
Yeah,
and
sure.
efficiency again, because if you think about technology evolution, we have been building technologies to speed up things, right? Fast, everything is fast. We move from text to now doing emojis, and how quickly can we communicate with one another, and the next dimension is how can we increase our efficiency, right? And that's where metaverse comes in business,
Okay.
right? So in our day-to-day life, we have got nice, the NFTs or video games where you get a great experience, right? Fun playing these games. They're very immersive, and
Yep.
you come out with feeling good about it, right? So now you take that efficiency and add into business and say, how can I make my office environment that immersive,
Mm.
right? How can I take away this gap of me being in the office and my colleagues are working remotely, that we feel that there is a distance between us. But if we can have a virtual meeting room where we can
Mm.
have a discussion that around a whiteboard, that doesn't feel like that separation is there, right? That feels that
Mhm.
I am next to you, and we're communicating over this visual. That's where metaverse comes in, right? Imagine going into an office space and you're booking your desk or you're booking your meeting room. Now you have to open your phone and you go to a two-dimensional map and you're trying to figure out the orientation with the map and which desk are you looking at and whether that is the right desk that you want to get because your colleagues will be booking next to it. But now imagine if you just hold the phone up and look at the desk and you can see through the lenses of your phone the desk, and there's
Right. Right.
superimposition of data on top of it saying this is green, this is available. So you click on it and it automatically gives you the opportunity to book that desk. Now
Mm.
suddenly that digital twin or that augmented reality is now increasing your experience in booking the meeting room. So it's not
Mm.
that arduous anymore. You're not complaining about, oh, I don't like booking meeting rooms because or desk because I can't find the right one, right? So it
Yep.
takes away those inefficiencies. It gives you a better experience. So you are more inclined to use the technology. That's where metaverse is coming into
Mm.
our business in the enterprise side.
And
Similarly,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
so I'm gonna say similarly on the industry side, right? It's also adding a lot of productivity and a lot of taking away frustration where you're trying to locate your parts or your equipments or instruments. They're in some container somewhere and you don't know where they are. Now you are using your headsets and you're using your devices where you're using augmented reality to get the data and locate those devices or sorry, the items faster than before. So that's where digital twin, that's where metaverse is coming in and adding value.
Fantastic. Yeah. And are there any? I guess I'd be curious to hear how you think about the technology components to making the metaverse a viable option for companies, and are there any specific technologies that are kind of leading the way in making this something that is more possible now than it was, a couple years ago?
Yeah, also display is one of the main things, right?
Okay.
Display, more and more you see, the overhead displays are getting projection onto your glasses, where you're hands free, right? So imagine if you're carrying the device and you have to scroll through the device and all that. So it doesn't add efficiency, right? Because your hands are tired, and then you have to put it down. Now, if you put it down, you lost the context of the location, right? You have to restart the process all over again. So bringing in a display, where it enables you to overlay data on top of it, is very important in this case, right? Second thing, because of the video images, because of the speed at which that you have to react to the environment, you need bigger pipes. So 5G, connectivity becomes very important, right? So evolution and
Right.
adoption of that is very important. And finally, moving the applications that we already use into the next generation metaverse compatible or
Okay.
augmented reality compatible uh, use patterns. Those are the things that needs to happen. So one, you have to get a display going. Two, you get the connectivity going, and then you have to have the conversions.
And let me ask, how does the digital twin potentially fit into the metaverse? How does it, what role does it kind of play there?
Yeah, digital twin is basically a graphical representation of the physical item, right? And the more vivid that image is, the more deeper or more interactive that digital image is. That helps you connect with it. So, for example, we are working with a customer who repairs airplane engines, jet engines, right? Um, Thousands of parts together. So imagine if you have a digital twin of a jet engine and you are blowing it up, and you can see the pieces around and you can move them and you can see, what their dimensions are, and you get the details of it, and then you can bring a part and you can replace it.
Right.
So not only just to visualize and play with it and do mock-ups, but creating prototypes, doing simulations, doing testing, it just gives you another dimension to be
Yeah.
more productive, more efficient.
And do you feel like there are any particular industries that are going to benefit the most or probably lead the way when it comes to utilizing the metaverse as we're speaking about it today?
Um, our customers are from manufacturing, warehousing. They're all creating proof of concepts. They're dabbling into figuring out how they can use it. Our global 3,000 customers who are in the office space. There are large organizations. They want to inspire and excite the workforce to come back to the office, to be able to use the facilities, to
Mm,
be able to get more immersive and better
right.
experience working in the environment. These are the companies who are already investing and figuring out how to use metaverse in our day-to-day office life.
And do you see any use cases kind of leading the way? And like we talked about some like capabilities and stuff, but are there any that just continually come up in your conversations that really are top of mind for organizations on when it comes to particular use cases utilizing IoT and kind of these technologies that enable the metaverse to be something real?
Yeah, laying overlaying data over
Okay.
images is something that comes up, right? Imagine all the IoT gadgets out there, are collecting all the information, right? All the data is being collected, but they're
Right.
not being passed on contextually to the user. And their ask is, if I am walking into a meeting room, can I get the meeting room temperature? Can I
Mm,
get the CO2 level? Because of all this pandemic stuff that happened, now we're conscious about the quality of air, things like this. That's there. All the IoT gadgets are there. Collecting
right.
data. How can we get that within the app? So our experience app. I don't want to do a plug on our product, but so we are trying to get the data into our experience app that our customers are using in a meaningful way, using augmented reality, overlaying it. Like I was explaining to you, how to book a desk, right? To make that experience better and get it easier. And the better the experience, Ryan, more people will use it.
Sure.
right? Otherwise, they'll find a workaround things.
I think that kind of goes for everything we've seen in the IoT space over the years, where the experience has to match or be close to the expectation, and then obviously the ROI has to back all that up. But in order for companies to adopt that experience for any use case, anything that they're doing on the IoT front has to be well understood, well realized. Otherwise, like you said, they'll find a workaround and they'll kind of ignore it for a while. But until we started to see a lot of these successes in the space, and with basically everything being realized by companies, IoT was having a tough time um, reaching the predictions that people were putting on the industry. And I think we're getting further along on that path for sure now.
I agree with you. I think IoT, as Internet of Things, Internet by itself is a network, right? So just having these IoT gadgets sitting there by themselves are not getting the kind of return that we thought it will. But
Right.
now, if you connect them, right? So now you start to overlay this information, and that's where you start to get more intelligence, right? And
100%.
that's what's happening slowly, right? So there's a lot of IoT platforms that are bringing in those data. What our company is doing is providing locational context on that. So if you say, hey, I've got this information that, what it was missing was that the gadget did not know where exactly it was located. So we're adding location on top of it, and suddenly now it's usable within the
Right.
context of your given environment.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. One of the things I wanted to ask you before we kind of wrap up here is about where does this go? Like, what does the future look like? Like, where do we feel, or do you feel there are still roadblocks and things we need to overcome, if anything, and what are those things? How do we kind of get around them? And then just what generally, looking out into the future, what does it look like for the metaverse to play a role in a lot of these areas that we're talking about now and potentially benefiting other industries?
Yeah, I think the future is amazing, with these technologies. I think once we get the display part figured out, once we get um, much faster adoption of the
Mm,
augmented reality and the use of 5G, like I was talking earlier, the connectivity is there. Now imagine if you're pushing things from the cloud.
right.
It takes time for you to then interact with the device in the cloud, and there's a latency. Then again, there's a missed opportunity there because people won't like that latency, because if you are providing somebody a wayfinding, for example, right, and your application is running 2-3 seconds behind, that person already has moved along from
Yeah.
the data that they're receiving, right? So I think connectivity and it will be a big piece of the puzzle in the
Mm,
future as we move along on this. I think our adoption curve will go into using some applications that are day-to-day use, like wayfinding, using it for meeting virtual meetings,
right.
where, like we're saying, where you can see yourself and your colleague working together in a more collaborative environment. We will see it more in the industrial area, pharmaceuticals. I think there's a lot of work going on in the medicine field that we are not involved in, but some of our customers are, that we are providing, mapping and positioning systems to them. So I think these are the areas that we will see progress, and
Hmm.
then imaginations will take us to the next level.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm very excited to kind of see where this goes. It's obviously the metaverse as a term is thrown out a lot, but I feel like that happens a lot with any new kind of area. Even like when IoT first started, IoT was thrown out all the time, but wasn't necessarily where maybe people thought it was from a maturity standpoint. I think the metaverse in some other areas has a long way to go, but the technology is there to really connect these two sides of it that we're talking about today, and it's very exciting to kind of predict and kind of stay in touch with what is happening on this side of things. So yeah, like you said, it's very exciting.
Some of the things, Ryan, like you said, if you look back, even a couple of years back, there were retail websites who were
Yeah.
trying to do these magic mirrors
Mm.
where you can try on
Yep.
different clothes, You know what I'm talking about? Like, you can scan yourself
Yep.
and choose
Yep.
your body type and lay
Yep.
on the clothes on top of it. So,
Right.
I mean, we have been dabbling with this, right? I mean, there has been an affinity towards, playing with your avatar and how it looks and all that,
Yep.
and sort of learning from it. So I think there is a propensity towards that kind of imagery. It's just that our technology is not there yet, and then we got
Sure.
a little, behind with the COVID
Well,
stuff. But I think
yeah.
it'll pick up.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have expectations about what that experience needs to be for us to get excited about it and want to invest the time and money into it. And a lot of the stuff we've seen over the years has kind of like dabbled in it just to, and I think it's been a good feeler to see how are people going to
Right.
respond. But the technology needs to be there to create the experience that people come to expect, given all the other technology that we interact with on a daily basis. Um, so yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. But it has been something people have been trying and are definitely using more, or implementing more now. And then the metaverse obviously term is getting out there to a wider audience. It's just, I think, just like with IoT, just like with VR, there's a lot of things people, I guess not so much IoT, but when you think about it as like a smart product standpoint, how it connects to the business side is always very interesting, and sometimes a little more delayed because it's usually led with consumer, like
Yeah.
smartphones and smart products are consumer led. um, and then the VR, it's more consumer, but there's so many applications for these technologies, and the metaverse I don't think is any different, that businesses can benefit from, and it's that the educational component needs to come in while the technology continues to mature and those experiences are realized, so that people feel more comfortable investing their time and money into it.
Well said. The one thing I'll just point out, though, and Silicon Valley, the IT industry has been a
Yep.
culprit doing it, is to come up with these terms. We name things,
Yep.
and then people chase around trying to define that name. Like it happened with the content management, Salesforce automation in the past, right? We have coined the term and said, okay, what does enterprise content management mean? There's so many things is plugged into that, so everybody has their own opinion. So when you go to our customers and they say, do you have enterprise content management, can you explain to me what that is?
Yep.
And then everybody comes from a different perspective, and it is a big confusion. Metaverse is that kind of thing, right? We have this word that we
Yep.
have been using, but what is that? That is the nirvana that we have to get to, confuses people, right? And that's
Yep.
where the conversation starts. And what we try to do is to get the customer come down from metaverse and say, let's figure out where you're trying to create efficiency, where you're trying to add augmented reality, what kind of technology are you ready to adapt, right?
Hmm.
Let's lay down the foundations with those things. Let's lay down the 2D maps, the 3D maps in place. Let's do the imaging that is required to bring in the display mechanism
Right.
into your application. Those
Right.
small steps will help you get to the metaverse. You can't just jump and get to metaverse in one go.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think um, our listeners should pay attention to, is that
Yeah.
it's not defined
Yeah.
metaverse yet.
Yeah, it's just the managing the expectations on where we are in reality now versus where we want to go, and not get too caught up in the hype, using and thinking that we are there, and realizing that we still have steps to get to the experience that we feel is necessary to allow this to really grow in the at the rate we everyone hopes it does.
Right.
So yeah, very 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 good points. Yeah, this conversation has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time. I do want to have or ask if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing with our audience where they may be able to follow up, ask questions about this conversations, get in touch if they want to learn more about the company, what you have going on, or obviously if any of this stuff is relevant to their business. What's the best way that they can touch base?
Yeah, definitely. Inpixion.com,
Okay.
Inpixon.com.
Okay.
Once you get to the website, you will see a lot of different information around mapping and positioning and
Fantastic.
augmented reality. So I think we have put a lot of educational material out there to get people to understand the technologies involved, and sort of relate and understand what it can do for them. And definitely, reach out. We have forms that you can fill on the website and reach out to us. We will be happy to engage. You can also drop me a line at das@inpixion.com. If you
Perfect.
have any questions, I'm always here to answer.
Fantastic. Well, Das, thank you again so much for taking the time today while you're traveling to educate our audience on the metaverse and the applications on the business side. I think it's going to be very well received. So thank you again.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate you having me. I really enjoyed
Absolutely.
this. All right.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching that episode of the IoT For All podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to hit the bell notification so you get the latest episodes as soon as they become available. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.